The following is a special presentation of the Empty the Bench Podcast Network. Welcome to Tough Enough, a recap and breakdown show from the MMA Outsiders, following every episode of The Ultimate Fighter Season 32. Team Grasso versus Team Shevchenko, presented by Playback. And now, here are your hosts, Tom Albano and Zain Bando.
And for the second straight year, second straight season of Tough, we welcome you to Tough Enough. Tom Albano here, along with Zain Bando. No, this is not the MMA Outsiders, but this is a special, once again, a special limited series, live series from the Empty the Bench Podcast Network and the MMA Outsiders. We're going to be with you, just like last season, for every single episode of The Ultimate Fighter. Last year, we were with you with all the madness of McGregor and Chandler, and that thing is just causing more of a headache now. Check out episode 86 of the MMA Outsider for more on that. But right now, we are here. It is time for Tough Enough. The Ultimate Fighter, Team Grasso versus Team Shevchenko. And we are here to give you all the aftermath of every episode.
Yeah, I'm excited to be back to do this with you, Tom. It'd be a fun season, and I'm very excited to see when the heck this flyweight rematch is going to happen. Because it'll more than likely be a year in the making by the time these two fight, and it'd be an interesting backdrop considering that there's not too much hate between these coaches, but at least the talent of the fighters should be an impressive feat. And I think episode 1 showed that and so much more. So we thank you again for joining us, and we'll look to take you through this journey together every Tuesday for the next 12 weeks, and it should be a blast. So.
Of course. So make sure you hit that like button. Make sure to subscribe. And keep in mind, this is not just going out on our Empty the Bench Podcast Network YouTube channel, but this is also going out to the MMA Outsiders social media channels on Facebook, X, as well as the Empty the Bench Podcast Network's Facebook and X accounts. So make sure to follow those accounts. And of course, if you're watching on our YouTube home, hit that like button, subscribe. If you don't know what our YouTube home is, it is youtube.com/ETB Network. We just hit 750 subscribers. I am so thrilled about that. I am honestly really happy that we just managed to get to the 750 mark. We are so close yet so far, but still creeping closer to the 1,000 mark. Can't wait for that. Make sure to, obviously, this is Tough Enough. This is not our usual episode, so there are no audio versions of the show, but still listen to every episode of the MMA Outsiders, our normal podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to go to youtube.com, etbpodcast.com for more information about the networks. And you and your crew are just cranking out blog after blog.
Yeah, we're just cranking out blog after blog on several different topics related to all the different kinds of sports. So we're in the meat of the madness when it comes to the NBA and NHL. And one of our fellow contributors is just dropping NFL nugget after NFL nugget. So as we get closer to the NFL season, you're going to see the content on there ramp up. And you're also getting the weekly UFC fix from our good friend Brett Cagle once a week ahead of every UFC event. So if you want a little fix of everything in sports, you check out the blog and see what you think, and I'm sure there's going to be more content along the way soon. And Tom, you had just mentioned this a second ago. You can listen to the MMA Outsiders wherever you get your podcasts, but you can also listen to Up and Up wherever you get YouTube, because that's going to be the main source of where this special edition is going to live outside of all of the different social channels as well, too.
That's true. So if you do have the YouTube Premium and everything, you could technically still listen to Tough Enough wherever you get us. And then, of course, one last thing that we can never forget: Yes, because this is still a production of the Empty the Bench Podcast Network, just like the MMA Outsiders and everything else here. Tough Enough, the Ultimate Fighter Team Grasso versus Team Shevchenko Aftermath is presented by our good friends over at Playback. Watching sports is more fun with others, but we spend too much of our time watching alone. Playback is a virtual space where communities can stream live sports together, with everyone perfectly synced up. Creators can hop on stage, deliver their own play-by-play analysis and commentary, and invite viewers up for Q&A. Playback makes watching sports fully interactive and a social experience. From playing fantasy sports, repping your favorite players and teams, and watching with the commentators and communities you care about. Win or lose, sports are best enjoyed together. Join our community by going to playback.tv/ETB Network to find out more, including our live stream schedule. We've been doing all the NBA playoffs, and I can't wait. Game 1 on Thursday night. We will be there on Playback for the Game 1 of the NBA Finals between the Mavericks and the Celtics. Should be a fun series there.
Absolutely. And speaking of fun, we had a lot of fun going into the very first episode of Tough 32. So I guess let's get into it. For those of you guys who don't know by now, the Ultimate Fighter is back. It's that time of year again. It's June, which means we are in the beginning of the Ultimate Fighter season. So yay for that. And this year's coaches can be understated. Alexa Grasso and Valentina Shevchenko are very good selections. Whether they were the correct selections given the current landscape of the promotion, that's another story for another day. But we did have team selections, and it was back to the traditional format. It was not veterans versus prospects like it was on the Ultimate Fighter Season 31 with Chandler and McGregor. It was more of a traditional coin toss, pick the teams, pick the first fight, et cetera, et cetera. I guess before we get into who...
We're kind of... Sorry, Zain. I was just going to say, we're kind of back to the norm on everything. And I mean, I liked the idea of prospects versus veterans, but that
was my next question. So please continue. Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry to cut you off then.
It's okay. I was gonna say, what do you think of them going back to the old format instead of doing veterans versus prospects like they did in season 31?
I guess it's a little bit of a relief, only because I think last year was a case of sounded good and looks good on paper, but the way they kind of executed it last season, maybe it was because of who the coaches involved, or maybe it's because of the way they structured everything and that, there wasn't a picking. So it was like last year was, if you picked a prospect at one weight class, you got all the prospects at that weight class. Yeah, it wasn't like picking guys like picking off the bench whenever you're playing backyard sports. Right. I kind of liked. It kind of felt normal, I guess is the word, going back to this.
Yeah, I would say not only was it normal going back to this, it felt like a traditional first episode of the Ultimate Fighter, which is good to see considering that the show had its hiatus for a couple of years and then it finally came back. So now we're back to the regular format, which is obvious. Like gave his speech, just reminded all the competitors as to what if they were in the UFC Apex, just remember what they came there for. And
we didn't get to the first 5 minutes of the show without Dana dropping an F-bomb.
Absolutely, because in typical Dana fashion, of course he would. And then, of course, we got into this section of the teams, and Alexa Grasso was able to get first pick, and I guess you get into it. I guess let's go through who each coach picks. So where do you want to start? What division and which coach to start it off?
Let's start with Grasso since she had the first pick, and let's start with the featherweights. So for the Grasso featherweights, we've got Begzad Usmanov, an 11-4 pro out of Jackson Wink with strong disciplines in Sambo, Muay Thai, and boxing. He was actually scheduled to face a tough veteran in Hunter Azure back in April, but that fight didn't end up playing out. My assumption because he was selected for this tough season. Also a BKFC veteran, so that really caught my eye. And he's somebody who has my eye at featherweight. The number one overall pick from Team Grasso was Guillermo Torres, 7-1 pro who's been a pro since 2016. He's 37 years old, which is concerning. Had a 2.5-year layoff. Khan Offley, who really has my eye as well from Team Grasso at this weight class, 11-2-1, coming out of Absolute MMA. He is actually a former featherweight champion on the regional scene for Hex and is currently riding an 8-fight win streak. And then to round things off for Team Grasso at featherweight, you got Myron Santos, 13-1 as a pro, 7 finishes. A Vale Tudo fighter who has competed in the LFA and with Chuta Brazil, actually competed in at LFA 155 in March of last year. That's his most recent fight. Most of the featherweights, something to note, really haven't competed in about a year. And his sole loss, by the way, Santos. Another name that might sound familiar from TUF, Dan Argueta at LFA 123.
Absolutely. That's definitely a familiar name if you were an OG TUF fan, that is for sure. Okay. I guess without further ado, I'm just gonna get into this a little bit more, and I'm gonna say who I think my dark horse middleweight is going to be, and I think that's.
Oh wait, hold on.
Go ahead.
We got to do the Shevchenko featherweights then.
Oh, sure. Yeah. You're right.
Okay, go. So for the Team Shevchenko, the other featherweights, Edwin Cooper Jr. He's a 6-1 pro out of Jackson Wink. He's competed in the LFA 4 times, and his last fight came in March of 2022. He was supposed to fight in the LFA in February 2023, canceled for unknown reasons. But competing in March of 2022, he had a shot at the PFL Challenger Series. He scored a victory over Troy Lamson, but he did not earn a PFL contract.
Yeah, and which, by the way, if the name Troy Lamson sounds familiar, he was discovered on Looking for a Fight several years ago, but it never panned out. So, yeah,
that's true. I forgot about that. Nathan Fletcher, a product, actually a veteran of the Cage Warriors promotion, coming out of Next Gen MMA, 8-1. Very good submission artist. 6 of his wins coming by submission. This next one, I apologize if I butcher this. Zigamantas Ramaska. He is a 9-2 pro. He has finished every fight he's been a part of, and he's actually a tournament champion. He competed in one of those 4-man, one-night tournaments at the inaugural Blade Fights and ended up winning that. And then, last but not least, the first overall pick from Team Shevchenko. So Torres was the first pick from Grasso, who had the first overall pick. Then Shevchenko got her choice of first pick, and she ends up picking Rody Rowitz, 7-1 pro out of Guts and Glory, and a veteran of EFC, not Eagle FC, the Khabib Nurmagomedov promotion, the EFC in Africa, who has hosted several names that have recently come onto the UFC scene in the last few years, including one middleweight champion that I love, Dricus du Plessis.
That is correct. It is for sure. He's definitely an EFC Africa product, so it's good to see that South Africa is getting more recognition, especially when MMA is trying to go towards more of a global footprint. So it's good to see.
Sorry, Zain, but that's the thing, and that's something we should have said before. This season has been promoted as the most international season of TUF ever, and it really kind of shows because you've got participants from, I believe, 14 countries. I think the U.S. has 2, and South Africa has 2. But there's a lot of international flair in this season, and I kind of like that for this season. I like that angle.
I do too, and given that both coaches are 100% international, non-American coaches, I think it only makes sense. So
for sure. So out of those,
the only thing that's missing is that this season shouldn't be at the Apex. This season should be at a neutral location in a different country that I can't think of at the moment. That's the only thing I can think of. Maybe one of those new performance institutes, like the one in Mexico City, would have been just absolutely perfect. But you know what I mean.
Yeah. So now going back to what you said before, now that we've gone through all the featherweights, what's your thought?
Well, I think this featherweight class is pretty deep. There's a lot of interesting names on it, but I have to say, I'd have to say probably for me specifically, I would say Umamanov would be somebody to watch in my opinion, as well as well as Nathan Fletcher. But honestly, this entire featherweight class is pretty good, and I think some of these guys could cause some upsets that maybe we weren't expecting. The one that I'm a little iffy on though, I would say is is I would say is Santos, just because even though he is 23 and he has a great record, the big question that I have with him is, has he fought the level of competition that this Ultimate Fighter season is going to bring, and that remains to be seen. Still very impressive. I think I just need to see a little bit more out of him.
I agree. Not that he doesn't have an impressive record. Like I said, I went through his credentials. He's got some great credentials, but he's 23. He doesn't have, he's a little green around the gills. He's still got plenty to learn. So I think he has the capability of going into the semifinals, but I think there's a chance that he could end up falling. If I could do what we did last year, Zan, and do a little bit of a top three here.
Okay.
I from Team Grasso, I like as number one. I like Con Olfley. Something about him catches my mind. The fact that he is a champion on the regional scene. He's coming in with an 8-fight win streak. He's got a lot of momentum riding, and he's got an impressive track record when it comes to performances and when it comes to the gym that he comes from in absolute MMA. I do like from Team Grasso as well, Bekzad Usmanov, as you mentioned before. I mean, he's a Jackson Wing product, and he's got strong sambo. He's got strong striking. There's a lot to like there. And then for number three, maybe because of the EFC Africa bias, I do like Rody Rowitz.
Yeah, I would say for me, Rotes and Ramaska, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. I think those would be the two that I think I would keep my eye on from this particular division. But as I just alluded to a second ago, this entire featherweight class has a lot of strengths and very few weaknesses. And as I just alluded to, if Santos can learn the ropes a little bit and more, he could definitely be a dark horse to make it to the semifinals, or even a surprise pick to make it to the finale. You never know.
For sure. But Zan, as impressive as the featherweights are, I think the middleweights. I mean, I kind of like what we've got going with the middleweights. This is pretty stacked, if I do say so myself. So going through with the middleweights again, starting with Team Grasso, you've got Omran Shaban, only 23 years old, just like Santos. He's fought only at two notable promotions in Cage Warriors and UAE Warriors, and in fact, he was just the UAE Warriors welterweight champion. He ended up getting a submission win in January.
And Dana White really supports UAE Warriors, so potential signing of this kid, I think, could make a promotion who's trying to pound Saudi Arabia as hard as they can pretty happy. That's for
sure.
That's for sure.
Also from Team Grasso, probably my favorite nickname of this whole season from Robert Valentin. He is Robzilla.
Yeah,
I thought that was going to get a better reaction. 10-3 from Fight Move Academy. He's fought for Aris FC, Levels Fight League, his fight unbeaten streak. Also from Team Grasso, you got Thomas Teocharis. I have a lot of concern about. He's a former Alaska Combat middleweight champion. He's competed in EFC Africa, Alaska Combat, Unified MMA, but if you look at his competition, all of his opponents are either sub 500 at the time, were 500 at the time, or were just barely above 500 at the time.
And I was going to say, he's definitely not fought the level of competition that his peers have.
And to say that, and he has a 9-5 record.
It's pretty. I would say it's impressive in air quotes, given the circumstances. That's where I would put it. This is one of those dudes. Let me think. He's almost like a Derek Krantz in a way, where Dana didn't want to sign him because he was 32 and he was like 20-12, but he gave him a chance anyway, and it didn't work out. this guy is the Derek Krantz of 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 30 of top 32 in my opinion, and it will be very interesting to see if this guy can make it out of his first fight or not, because I'm banking on the answer probably not.
I agree. I completely agree. And then rounding out things for Team Grasso at middleweight, for a 4-1 pro, all finishes from Cage Warriors and Cage Conflict. It's only Paddy McCrory. It's another Paddy from Ireland.
Yeah, literally. I mean, I'm sure this is going to be everybody's favorite pick to potentially win the season in this division, but just like I alluded to, the lack of experience, a 4-1 record probably has not fought this same level of competition as his peers. He'll probably need some sort of an injury or some sort of an alternate to allow for him to get a real chance, because I just don't think his resume stacks up to some of these other fighters, especially in ones that have 11, 12, and even 13 wins. So
yeah, definitely. And then from Team Shevchenko, you've got, pardon me if I butchered this, Shamadkan Magomedov, an 8-1 pro with 7 finishes, a master of sports in wrestling and a former champion of grappling in Russia, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu purple belt who's competed in LFA, EFC Africa, Ring of Combat, Eagle FC, quite notable promotions, and he is the former interim LFA welterweight champion, scoring a first-round finish of Devin Smith from February. You also got Mark Holm, a former EFC welterweight champion who's won 4 straight and 10 of 11. He's fought in a whole bunch of notable promotions as well: EA Africa, ACA, UAE Warriors, Brave, M1. He's 12-3, 7 wins via submission. You got Ryan Loader, 6-1 pro, who's fought in United and who's fought for A1 Combat, which is run by the legendary Uriah Faber. He his most recent, he actually has a win over a Dana White Contender Series alumnus in Leon Shabazian. And if you know that name, Shabazian, that's because Leon is the brother of the Golden Boy, Edmund Shabazian.
Absolutely. So I'm just going to be blunt and say that's right
hold
now.
On, one more.
Go ahead.
One more. Giannis, can't forget about Giannis Bachar, 9-2 from MMA Masters. Actually, is a former Cage Warriors welterweight champion who knocked out Amiel Brown in 50 seconds back in November to Capshot. Also a former Global Legion FC welterweight champion. So you have a bunch of former champions at the middleweight weight class. Now, most of them were at welterweight, and now they're competing up here at middleweight.
Right, exactly. I'm just going to be blunt and say this: in the semifinals or the finals of the middleweight class, I'm just going to go on a limb and say I think it's going to be Magomedov versus Holm. What do you think?
I think, to be honest with you, I think as much as the middleweight class is stacked, I think Shevchenko has the better middleweights, because the 3 that I have my eyes on are Magomedov with his.
I'm saying, what do you think a potential matchup that I just alluded to being a semifinal or final?
I like it. Mm-hmm. I definitely like it. I think Magomedov is one I have my eye on. Holm is another one I have my eye on. And where is it? Giannis Bachar. 3 former champions, all under the Team Shevchenko banner. I think that's pretty dangerous. And I'm not just talking former champions, but I'm talking champions in LFA, EFC Africa, and Cage Warriors. All 3 promotions that have proven themselves as really worthy stepping stones towards the UFC.
For sure. So could you make an argument that Shevchenko's team is better than Grasso's team?
On the middleweight front, yes.
Would you say on the featherweight front, it's the opposite? Because I would.
I would probably say for the overall picture as well, yes.
All right. So with that being said, before we get into the actual fight itself, who are we picking to win the Ultimate Fighter at middleweight and at featherweight in your opinion?
Okay, well, I went through my top 3 at featherweight, and my number 1 was, did I say? Oh, I said Offley. I said Offley is my number 1. Usmanov is my number 2. And then where are we? At middleweight, I mean, it's tough to go against somebody whose last name is Magomedov in this sport.
It's true. So I'm just gonna I'm just gonna say my pick to win the season at featherweight might be a surprise, but I'm gonna go with Ramoska at featherweight to win in the season there, and then at middleweight I'm gonna go with I'm actually gonna go with a bit of a dark horse, and I'm gonna stick with my original proclamation, and I'm gonna say that Home beats Magomedov in the semifinal to get to the finale and wins the season.
Ooh, I like that. Honestly, I honestly thinking about it now, I think Magomedov versus Holm wouldn't just be a great semifinal fight. I think it would be a great finale fight.
That's what I think too, and it sucks that they don't give you the bracket right away because if you had the bracket in front of you, I think it would be a lot easier to pick. But with no bracket, it's hard to say which fight would end where. But
Well,
Magomed,
they picked the coaches picked the matchups.
no, that's true. But what I'm saying is, you have to wait until the coaches pick every single matchup to actually
Oh
know
yeah.
who's gonna advance and stuff, which makes it kind of harder. So speaking because of our time constraints, we you should move into actually breaking down what the first fight actually was because it was very interesting. Team Grasso going with their first overall pick in Torres in fighting Rhodes. We're gonna get into Rhodes'
Yeah, and then
backstory
Zen,
really quick.
I will say that was one thing that caught my eye was that that Shevchenko chose to have the two number one picks fight one another. But I kind of got her strategy in that, oh, have my number one pick take on her number one pick to see the strength in that. I just thought it was a little risky because if Rhodes had
I
lost
I
this
I
matchup,
thought so
that would
too.
have been a really bad start.
And I think it would have been a really bad start the other way too, which we're going to get to in a second. Eventually, ended up happening. But getting into Rhodes' backstory, you know, he's from he's from South Africa, which he was really proud of, and he quickly realized that he wasn't going to be. I think it was a really good
Rugby
rugby
player.
rugby player is what he said. So he said that he quickly knew he needed to get into wrestling, and then from there, wrestling kind of transitioned into MMA, and of course his dad was a huge support in all of that. So I just think his family loyalty to me is an interesting part of his story, and to me, just him being so proud of his country and where he comes from, I think is really cool, especially since South Africa doesn't have a ton of representation. Yeah, they do have a current champion at the moment at middleweight in the UFC, but that's still a region that's still kind of building up its credibility in terms of regional fighters, and Rhodes could definitely be one of those guys. But I thought that his story was very unique, and I just think it's cool that it's a dad coach relationship, and I thought that was the most unique part about it. What did you think?
Yeah, no, I thought I really liked his story, and I kind of like the relationship that yeah with his dad. I mean, it can't be easy, and I think Rhodes even says it during the video that it's not easy being a dad coach, basically having to be both a dad and a coach. But you see the strong bond between the two, and I think they've made everything. They've really made everything work, and now Rhodes is here with the biggest opportunity in front of him.
Yeah, not just the biggest opportunity in front of him, but the biggest opportunity to also represent South Africa on a massive stage like ESPN on a weekly basis. So there's nothing there's nothing to sweat at that about that. That's a really cool backstory too. And Torres, just a dude cut from a straight cloth. And what I mean by that is, having that Mexican warrior spirit is I think what makes him unique. He's very confident in himself, and he just felt that he was going to be able to represent Mexico proudly on this season. It was very complimentary of Grasso for having Grasso allow him to be her first pick, which I thought was very honorable from kind of like a culture sense, and his story was
Hmm.
also very cool in many ways, just because now that entire country of Mexico is being more enthralled with fighters than ever before, and Grasso being one of them, and he wants to also carry on that legacy himself, which I thought was very unique.
He does, and he talked a lot about the female figures in his life, basically how they've raised him and how he has this deep connection and bond with them, that being his mother, his sister, and above all else, his daughter. And he said that was probably the toughest part of making this journey for Tough and being able to train under the likes of Grasso, Shevchenko, and the other tough coaches was being away from her. And I mean, that always seems to hit home. I mean, obviously, we just had Dustin Poirier last weekend finally, potentially his last fight ever, having his daughter there in the arena. It's always the separation of family, that plays a part of the sacrifices required in the sport.
Oh, for sure, and that can't be that can't be that can't be stated more and more and more because, as we alluded to, there's a huge international flavor on this show, and Torres definitely represents that. Let's get into the actual fight itself. It was a very competitive fight, and for those of you who missed the episode tonight, unfortunately, the spoiler is right there. Team Shevchenko did take a 1-0 lead in this season. Brody Rhodes edging out a very tough, gritty, unanimous decision against Torres. And what I thought was a very competitive fight, super heavy on the grappling, especially rounds 2 and 3, but Rhodes was able to just do a little bit more to edge out the win. I thought this was a very competitive, even in fight all the way through. Did you agree with the judges' scorecards? And did you think that? And did you think that Cruz? Not Cruz. I keep thinking of Cruz whenever his name's as Torres, but did you think that even did you think that even in the loss, Torres did enough to say, hey, well, maybe if a fighter falls out, I deserve to come back because I gave my best effort, because I thought so.
Absolutely, and you're right. Very grappling heavy matchup. Rhodes had the advantage right away. He kept his distance. He then went in for the takedown when he saw the opportunity. And even when the fight got back to the feet, when you look at the clinching positioning, it was all Rhodes in round 1. Now, Torres did enough. He actually ends up scoring a takedown. I got very worried, though, for him in that second round, because Rhodes at one point is able to reverse position and transition into the mount. When the mount came, I said, uh-oh, this isn't going to be good. But somehow Torres was able to get back into top control. And then round 3 happens, and Rhodes, I was a little surprised he traded as long as he did. What was very weird to me, Zan, is that they talked about Guillermo versus Rody here to be a striker versus grappler matchup, because they talked about Guillermo striking, and they showed footage of Grasso working striking with him.
Right.
He has a wrestling background, and he even talked about it in his video. So it really should not have been a surprise that this was an all grappling battle, but
no, it shouldn't.
Whatever. Nevertheless, you had some good takedown defense, Torres, but ultimately Rhodes was able to still control the fight, and he did finally landing the takedown. It was a clear 2-1 victory, 29-28 for Rhodes.
Yeah, for sure. We've seen some controversial decisions on TUF in the past, but this clearly is not one of them. Yes. Before we give our final thoughts on the episode at large.
Then actually, can I bring up one more thing?
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
I really caught my eye on this episode. Did you see that Valentina doesn't let her fighters drink any water while training?
Yeah, that was a very interesting training method that I did not understand.
That basically to train the mind as well as the body.
I thought that water was supposed to help with that, but okay.
I understand what she's trying to do. I
do too, but to me, at the same time, it's a very unique and non-conventional training method that I don't think people should be recommending to other people, especially a world-class former flyweight champion. But she is the greatest flyweight of all time for a reason, so she probably knows things that most people don't know. So she may be at a point.
I've trained with interval training and reverse interval training, which you go a while without having to drink water.
Right. I just think the entire training session is a little bit much. Nevertheless, though, before we give our final thoughts on episode 1, do you think that Team Shevchenko has enough momentum to keep this going, or do you think that Grasso's team notches it up 1-1 regardless of weight division, even though middleweights will be the division that will be featured in episode 2?
I think it's a strong start. Like we talked about before, it was just a battle of the number 1 overall picks, and Rhodes ends up getting the victory there, beating out Grasso's number 1 pick, which means, what does that mean for the rest of Grasso's team? Especially, as you mentioned, Zan, next week we got our first middleweight fight, and I'll just transition to that right now. We've got Magomedov on Shevchenko's side, and we got Jaban on Grasso's side. And Magomedov,
should be a fantastic fight, in my opinion.
I agree. And if Shevchenko can manage to knock off another Grasso talent, and I think it's possible because Magomedov is one of my picks at middleweight. I mean, he is my pick at middleweight. That's not going to smell good for Grasso. And hopefully this doesn't end up like the last two seasons where we had the near sweep on the Chandler McGregor first round side, and then in the Volkanovski Ortega side where we had one fighter's team winning the first 4 fights and then the next fighter's team winning the next 4.
You never know, but I do think, given that Magomedov is one of my picks, I'm gonna go with the safe pick here and say that Shevchenko's team goes up 2 fights to none. But given how unpredictable TUF is, and you never know what can happen if Shaban comes out on top and pulls off the upset. I wouldn't be surprised either. So.
For sure. Hey, fun episode, fun first episode for TUF, and fun premiere for season 2 of Tough Enough.
For sure, we can't wait to be with you guys all season long again, and it's 12 episodes. And before we get out of here, make sure to like, follow, and subscribe to the ETB Network all across our YouTube home and social media channels, as we mentioned at the beginning of the episode. And be sure to listen to every episode of our flagship show, the MMA Outsiders, wherever you get your podcast. And of course, be sure to check out our latest episode of the MMA Outsiders if you haven't already. We discussed everything that as UFC 302, the Conor McGregor Michael Chandler madness, whether or not the fight's still happening, and so much more, and a lot of other fun combat sports news that you don't want to miss. But and it was very, very fun to do this with you. I'm looking forward to doing this in the weeks ahead, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how the season plays out, because there's nothing like in the Ultimate Fighter finale weekend hits and the 6-figure contracts are in hand, and you realize, oh shoot, a Dana White Contender Series is about to start. We get to do this all over again next year. So before you know it, it'll be over. So let's do our best to enjoy the ride as much as we can, for sure.
Yeah, and I can say for my own personal sake, I want the summer to go nice and slow. So let's take every TUF episode one episode at a time. I can't wait to enjoy this ride with all of you. All right. For Zain, I'm Tom. We'll see you next week for episode 2 of Tough Enough. Take care, everybody.
See you guys soon. Have a good one.